Scene change. Whoppa! Oh, hello. Wow, here we go. Howdy, howdy. So, we are going to be ranking some. Hold on, let me get my. I wrote about 11 pages of notes on all the characters and my thoughts about them. I put like more time than I probably should have into this, at least as far as writing stuff down. We'll see if it's actually any good. Don't look at that ad. But yeah, so we've got our tiers. So our tier number one, the best tier, is a full 5-course meal of excellence. Tier two is great sex, but someone farts in the middle and it's a bit distracting, right? Like, it's not like you're gonna not enjoy yourself. Like, you're still gonna have fun. Hopefully you're not gonna stop just for a little toot, right? You'll probably just keep on keeping on. But it'll be like you can't ignore it, right? So this is for characters that are overall good, but they've just got those little things about them, that just pop up unexpectedly that distract you from that. And yeah, I was considering that. Maybe you like farts. Maybe I'm sure there are plenty of people that might say or argue that we should switch these two. And if that is your opinion, I mean, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to tell you no. I'm not going to tell you don't. Maybe for you, like, yeah, maybe that just enhances the overall experience. I don't know. I don't know. But this is my tier list, and so for my tier list, it's not a deal breaker by any means. If it's going good otherwise, but yeah. Then we have does what it says on the tin. It's for general main characters. They get the job done. They're nothing like particularly special, but they're nothing like awful or anything. And we've got basically a plank of wood. There's going to be a lot of characters in this section, unfortunately. Basically a plank of wood, no personality anyway, or any to be found. And then we've got garbage trash characters, right? And there's going to be a few of these too. I'll tell you what, we're going to have a few garbage trash characters as well. So anyway, let me go over the things that I'm going to be ranking these according to. So my criteria, I have 4 criteria that I'm going off of. 1, the character itself. Are they entertaining? How do they make me feel when I look at the story through their eyes? Do I generally like them, right? 2 is character development, if they have it, right? If they have character development, is it executed well? Is it believable, interesting, effective, all of that? 3, how much do they actually impact the narrative? And 4, is the character fun to play in the game, to control, right? When you control the character, are they fun, right? Do you have fun when you play them as in relative to other characters? So let's jump into this. Starting with number 1, Final Fantasy 1, and I think we all know exactly where this is going. Basically a plank of wood. There's no personality to these characters. The first Final Fantasy came out in the 80s, there was like limited cartridge space. So there's no character development, there's no character to speak of. You are just a job. You're like a warrior or a fighter or like a mage or a ninja or something like that. That's basically it. The whole story of FF1 is pretty bare bones in general. So yeah. Now, is the character fun to play? Yeah. Final Fantasy 1 is pretty fun. And, each job is interesting and brings something new to the table, whether it's like punching stuff or magicking stuff or healing stuff, any of those things. So it's generally fun, but the character itself, Warrior of Light in this case, is a plank of wood. Who cares? Next, we've got Firion. Now, honestly, there's like nothing to say about Firion either. He's basically a plank of wood. Again, this game is early in Final Fantasy's lifetime, and it's like, He's basically just your typical hero, like goody two shoes. Ooh, I want to fight the emperor, and ooh, I'm gonna save the world, man. He's just like a hero, and he doesn't even have any quirkiness to him. Like other characters, like Gus, at least has a gimmick that he talks to animals, other than his completely bland and boring personality. At least he talks to animals. That's cool, right? To be honest, the Emperor, the villain, is like way more interesting than any of the main cast and way cooler. So, which is not an uncommon theme amongst Final Fantasy games. So, yeah, Plank of Wood. And the first one, third one, we're getting him out of the way too. The Onion Knight. Um, I know there's a remake of this where they actually gave them like personalities and stuff. They like renamed them to like Lunith and Arc the Lad or like Ingot or something like that. But I didn't play any of those, and from what I hear, they're like pretty much like whatever characters anyway. Super stereotypical. Oh, I'm a hero, or just like they fit into very like uninteresting tropes. So basically, nothing interesting here. Having trouble even remembering who wasn't a plank of wood other than Titus, who is an idiot. Yeah. So, well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. I'm gonna a lot of them. There are a lot of plank of wood, planks of woods, plank of woods, planks of wood in this tier list. The first three, like already this is like what 1/4 or something like that, almost. So not good for you guys so far. Final Fantasy. Okay, now we get to Final Fantasy IV, Cecil, and this is where things get interesting because we finally have characters with character development coming in. However, I've got a hot take coming through. I think Cecil is super overrated. Cecil is like, he's a commonly beloved character, He looks badass. He's super cool. He's got beautiful hair, you know? And people love him because, like, he has this whole story about how he's a dark knight and he's evil, and then he becomes a good knight, right? He becomes a paladin, and it's like, ooh, redemption arc. So he's supposed to have character development, right? Um, but here's the thing, he really doesn't. Because when we first meet him, he's already conflicted, right? We never see him as a bad guy that then becomes a good guy. He's always a good guy that's just done something bad out of duty to the king, right? Duty to his country. He's done something wrong, but he immediately feels bad about it. He immediately regrets it right from the very beginning. His opening lines are about how he's conflicted about what he's just done. So this doesn't leave us with a lot of room to grow as far as the character development goes, because we've already had it. Or we don't really need it because he's basically good from the get-go. In fact, within the first like 20-30 minutes of the whole game, he's already committed to like fighting against the king and going on an adventure to like help Rydia and stop Baron from taking over the world and all that. So this means that his whole character arc and path of redemption and stuff just doesn't hit very hard, to like in retrospect. I think when I was a kid playing it, it felt a lot more impactful because you got to climb that mountain and you fight your bad self and all that stuff. And that part's fine. But in thinking back on it, I feel like there's not a lot of substance to his actual development. And even that whole thing about becoming a paladin, that's done in like the first 3 to 4 hours of gameplay, or even less maybe. And then from then on out, he's just kind of like your run of the mill hero dude. He's just good because he's good and honorable and all that. There's not too much else going on. Um, Now, like, that's fine. Now, narratively, is he important though? Yeah, narratively, basically everything revolves around him. He plays an active role in furthering all of the events of the story. He's the like he's got a whole family thing too, where like his brother is like he and his brother are like half moon or something, and his brother's like a bad guy, but he's being mind controlled by another bad guy, and so he's got all the proper like connections with that as narratively speaking. Um, there's a lot of other characters that do basically nothing to impact the story, uh, but he's definitely not one of them. Now, is he fun to play as? Yeah, he's pretty fun. He's more fun than like Kane, who's basically like does hardly anything. Kane is just like jump, attack, jump. That's it. That's all he's got going for him. Whereas like Cecil, he's got the cover mechanic, which is cool. He's got some white magic for a little bit of utility. He's a tank and does a lot of damage, so he's pretty fun to play as. He's not as interesting as like Rydia, who's got like summons and magic, or Rosa, who's also got magic and shoots the bow and arrow and stuff. Like Rosa's way cooler to play around with, but he's not bad. So all in all, does what it says on the tin. And tits. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess Rydia and Rosa have both of those things as well, which Cecil is lacking. However, have you seen this hair? Have you seen these locks, these platinum locks? I mean, he did it before it was cool. So, I mean, that's pretty rad. That's pretty rad. Yeah, honestly, he is arguably sexier than a lot of the females and a lot of the women in that character too, and that God, a lot of the women in that game as well. But anyway, that's Cecil. I think he's pretty overrated. He's just fine. He's fine. He does what it says on the tin. He's a hero, and that's about it. Okay, now we move on to Bartz from Final Fantasy V. Bartz, my man, he is the first fun protagonist on this list. He actually has like he's just like carefree and grooving, he's like some kind of like hippie who just travels around with his bird and just hangs out and goes on adventures. He's like living that super chill life, which is really cool. He just goes with the wind, man, just going along with the wind. So I like that kind of carefree aspect about him. Fundamentally, though, he's still like a kind of a I'm going to do good because I have a moral compass, which is something that like heroes need to have. So that's fine, and it even has a little bit of character development. Um, with like the idea that maybe he's a little too carefree, and some of the characters even call him out on being like too lackadaisical about everything. um and then he's like, okay, well, I guess I gotta stop just wandering and like go somewhere, have a direction to my life. So that's really cool. A little bit of character development. um which is and that makes his like character development, I think, feel a little more natural than Cecil's, which is kind of like clunky and stunted because it's so heavily loaded on the front end of the game and the story, whereas his feels a little more spread out, I guess. And maybe like it's because it's not intended to be as grand of a change, right? Like Cecil's development is supposed to be like this huge transition, but it doesn't really feel that way. Whereas Bart's isn't supposed to be a huge transition. It's just supposed to be like I was kind of a bozo just hanging out, and now I kind of want to do something with my life. So maybe the bar is just lower, but I think it feels better. Now he splits a lot of importance with other characters, much more than Cecil does. He does have the whole family lineage thing going on, like his dad. What's his dad's name? Like Duran Duran or something like that. I forgot his dad's name. It's like Dorgan, Dorganen, Dorgan, or something like that. Dorgan or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Duran Duran. Wait, Duran Duran is the hungry like the wolf. Yeah, yeah. But so he's got that. I don't really have a problem with that, but it's just not too special. Overall, he plays a pretty big role, I think, in the narrative, but not like not maybe as much as Cecil does. You know, there's other characters that do a lot of stuff too, like Galuf, right? Galuf, even though he dies, feels pretty like important to me from a narrative point of view, and all that stuff. So he is great sex, but someone farts in the middle and it's a bit distracting. Tier level. Great, but not perfect. Not quite perfect. I also feel like Lena and Ferris's stories better guide the plot, and Butts is just along for the ride. Yeah, and you played the game much more recently than I did, Thrashy, so you'd probably be in a better position to comment on that. But I seem to remember that too. That because Lena, she's like the princess of the of like what is it, Hyrule? Isn't it like a Zelda clone or something? Is the country called Hyrule? Tycoon. Okay, Tycoon. Okay, whatever. She's president of Tycoon, um, and then like Ferris is the sister, and so there it feels like there is more going on with that with that story arc than with Bart's. He just kind of yeah he's just going with the wind, you know. He just going with the wind. Oh, and I almost forgot something. Hold up. Chotomate ne. That is better. I got my Final Fantasy VII periodic materia table list on. I got to wear the right shirt for the occasion. I forgot to change my shirt because I've been on summer vacation and yeah, time is a strange concept. But anyway, now we're good to go. Now we're good to go. I'm actually surprised you didn't. I'm surprised you didn't accidentally leave the camera on. Oh yeah, show you all my sparsely haired back. Yeah, yeah. Give a little show. No, I've learned this time. I'm not going to repeat the error of my ways. I've done that once where I accidentally left the camera on, except I legit left it on. Never again. Anyway, putting aside my disgusting poison oak foot, Bart's. Yeah, I think that's about. Oh yeah, is he fun? Is Bart's fun? Well, honestly, there's no like difference between him or any of the other characters because there's a job system. Any character can be anything you want. I don't think there's any stats that like are inherent to any one character in that game. So he is as fun as Final Fantasy 15 in general is, or sorry, Final Fantasy 5, which is pretty fun. I love that game. The game it's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, he is fun, but not more fun than anyone else. I guess is my point. All right, now we get to some heavy hitters. Tara Branford. Tara is a top tier character. She is a full 5-course miru, full 5-course meal of excellence. Fantastic character. FF6 is the first Final Fantasy game that's like super character driven, rather than just like plot driven. And she is no exception to being a character that has great plot and development and a great story. Um, Now, I think makes her interesting is that, like, at the beginning of the game, she's just a blank slate because she's been mind controlled by the enemy empire, and then she has amnesia after she's no longer under their control, so she doesn't really know what it means to be human, and she doesn't really know what it means to have volition and agency because she's been a slave essentially to the empire, right? So basically she's trying to like figure out what it means to be human and have this agency and choice and stuff like that, especially since the world seems so cruel, you know? Like the world seems awful. There's just despair all around. It's sort of like a Fifth Element Lilu Dallas moment, you know? She's like, man, everything's so sad. Um, and she's constantly being pressed to choose to use her agency to go in a particular direction. Like literally almost as soon as she gets her own willpower back. Like Locke in that, what's that dude's name that's the leader of the rebels? He's got like the hair. It's like, I forgot his name. It's like Bart or Bigums. Bannon. Bannon, yeah. Steve Bannon. Um, so yeah, Bannon. So Bannon is like, hey, join my rebels and everything. So she has to use her agency, and her choices have huge ramifications. I like Bigums better. Yeah, Bigums free. I like that too. Um, so there's a lot on her plate, basically, as far as her decisions make. And so she struggles with this, right? She struggles and she sort of just goes along with it. And along the way, she toys with the idea of like love. Like, what is love? What does it mean to love? Because love is sort of a concept that is like pretty, human or sentient being esque or and so she's toying with this idea, and at first she meets Leo, and there's sort of like a romantic love almost. It's kind of the vibes I got between Leo and Tara, and so she's sort of like she finds that compelling, this idea of romantic love, and maybe she can fight for Leo, but then Leo dies. Leo gets killed by Kefka just as this new love is blossoming, right? And so that basically is out of the window, um, which is actually something that I kind of like. She her like reason to fight that she was looking for was basically taken from her, um, and she sort of left wondering what to do such a cruel world. And what I like about this too is that Tara serves as a really good parallel to Kefka, right? Because Kefka goes insane from using the magicite, and his response to the travesties of the world is to basically go like mega perverted nihilism and just destroy everything, right? And basically say that nothing matters, so we should reduce everything to nothing. But in the world of Ruin, um, Tara becomes like kind of like the mother figure to all those little orphans, right? And I really like this because she finds sort of a new form of love. That it's not romantic love; it's more of like a parental, nurturing love. That is probably even deeper than what she was feeling for Leo. And what I like about this is she uses her own agency to do that, right? She uses her own volition to take care of those kids and eventually grow to love them. So it cycles very nicely back into her original main plot points, which is that she's looking for a way to use her agency in a meaningful way, and what does it mean to have agency and choice. And she chooses love, which is really cool. And it's not because she was swept off her feet by Leo or anything like that. She chooses love because she wants to. And so I think that that is really pretty powerful development. So it's really, really cool. Is she impactful to the story? Yeah. In the beginning, she is, right? In the beginning, she's like the main focal point of everything because she's like a walking death machine because she can use magic and like pretty much no one else can. Cool thing about Final Fantasy VI is that no one character is like steals the spotlight because as more other characters join, her importance kind of gets split up to the point where she's even an optional character in the world of Ruin. You don't have to do her storyline, although from what I hear, she does fly in for the final fight. Whether or not you do her story, but you can actually skip that part of her narrative and her development. So uh, it's yeah, her importance diminishes pretty significantly as far as the narrative is concerned. But her whole like arc still encapsulates like the core themes of the game, about agency and love and all that good stuff, and what does it mean to live and why is living important. So she's definitely like really important. Now, is she fun? I'd say yeah. I'd say she's pretty fun. She's got like a really high magic stat. She's the only one who learns magic innately until you get like Celeste, I think. Um, but her morph ability is kind of like meh. It's cool because she turns into a fairy. I mean, sorry, a furry. She turns into a furry, so that's pretty cool, right? That's pretty sick. A pink-haired furry, but like it's not that great. You have to use a turn to do it. It goes away after a while. And then there's other party members' abilities like Edgar's and Sabin's that are like way better. But at least it's not as trash as Celeste's runic ability. That is like by far the worst. That one sucks. Okay, moving on. Final Fantasy VII, Cloud Strife. Okay. Oh boy. I have a rocky relationship with Cloud and how much I like him. As a kid, I was like, oh my God, Cloud is the coolest dude ever. That hair, that shoulder pad, that big, girthy sword. Oh my God, Cloud is amazing, right? And he knows how to swing it, don't he? I was like, Cloud is like the sickest character. He was so tight. And then I became a teenager and I was like, oh my God, Cloud is so stupid. Like he's overrated, man. He's overrated. He's a trash character. And now that I'm an adult, I'm kind of like, I think I understand his character better and what the authors of the story were going for, and I think I can relate to Cloud a little bit more. Um, Now he is super cool to look at for the most part. I feel like he's a little skinny though. Don't you just wish that Cloud had like a little bit bigger muscles? Like he's swinging that huge sword. Sometimes he just looks like he's dwarfed by the size of his sword. It's too big for his frame. I almost feel like sometimes, but generally he's pretty cool looking. He's a pretty complicated character. He's got the whole I'm a badass ex-soldier thing. He kind of comes off as like a little bit selfish or I don't really care about you guys. But you're shown pretty quickly that that's not really the case. Like you see with his interactions with Tifa and Aerith pretty early on that like he's not really that. He's distant, but he's not mean, right? He's distant but not mean, um, which is a big difference from another certain other character, another weather-based character, weather-named character we're going to talk about. Fat Cloud, yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind. Fat Cloud, yeah. I wish he looked like a strong man. I would consider him to be more overrated than Cecil. I mean, I think you can. There's an argument to be made with that, but hear me out. Hear me out. But for the time being, I think Cecil's a little more overrated, just because I don't think he's got. I think Cecil's borderline plank of wood, but I know that part of the problem with Cloud is that like he's so iconic, right? He's so crazy iconic that the bar is maybe set a little too high for him. I could accept that. I could accept that. That he doesn't quite live up to the reputation, which is actually a very fitting would be very fitting for him because he's got a reputation of being an ex-soldier, which he also doesn't live up to. uh, he's never good enough. So anyway, um, because of his past, he's sort of like a blend of like Zack and Sephiroth's and his own personality. So he's got some of the quick-wittedness and confidence of Zack, kind of the moodiness of Sephiroth, but like the part of Cloud that's most distinctly his is his own insecurity, which leads me to his character development. His character development is super meta. After you learn that like all of his memories of the past, or like most of them, are actually Zack's memories, and he never really got into Soldier, right? He failed. He tried to get into Soldier, but they wouldn't let him because he wasn't good enough. like his whole perception of himself gets completely erased because that was like his dream, and he had convinced himself that he had done it. He'd convinced himself that he'd accomplished his goal, and then it's revealed that no, Cloud, you're trash. You didn't actually do it. You were never good enough, right? You were never good enough. Um, and you literally go into his psyche to resolve this inner turmoil, which I actually think is a pretty good moment. It's a pretty like one of the more there. Obviously, some other pretty memorable story events that stick out, like a certain pink dressed character, uh, something that happens to her. She dies. This game is like freaking old as hell. Not a spoiler, I don't think. But anyway, um, but that moment of going into his psyche, I thought was pretty impactful for me at least, or pretty memorable. All right, doggo is wanting to say hi. Um, and then like his development is really about accepting his own failure and coming to terms with that and moving on. You know that with the reality that he didn't live up to his dreams. He didn't. He failed. Um, and then after that sequence, you see a pretty demonstrable shift in his personality where he, like, the bravado is gone, but he feels more secure in himself than he ever was before. The whole, like, oh, I'm an ex soldier, like, machismo, it has been stripped away from him. But now he's still very, now he's like more confident. He feels more secure now that he's come to terms with his own um, weakness and failures. And that's something that I think has become more relatable to me as I've gotten older, because I think that we all can identify with the feeling that we had a lot of ambitions maybe when we were younger, or like dreams that didn't play out for whatever reason, right? And we failed to get into soldier, like maybe it just didn't go as expected. And that can be hard to deal with, and it can be hard to be comfortable with that knowledge. um, so I can kind of see why Cloud would want to not accept that and run away from that, because yeah, I might want to run away from that too. But we can learn from Cloud to, like, what we can learn, I guess, is like to keep pushing through that, right? To keep pushing through that and keep pressing on with your goals. And that's why I think that he's like, that's why I think that he is a pretty good character. Oh yeah. I mean, that's just kind of my take on Cloud, and that's kind of why I think that I don't think he is as overrated as I did when I was a teenager. What are you talking about? I've never failed at anything. Get good, new. Yeah, never failed a single thing. Yeah, I agree. I've never failed anything either. Now, is Cloud impactful to the narrative? Yeah, definitely. He like kills the original Sephiroth, or at least throws him. He like, Emperor Palpatine's him down that silo or whatever. And he's also the one who, after Sephiroth appears in the Shinra building, Cloud's the one that's like, we got to go chase him, right? I know Sephiroth. We've got to go chase him. So that's a pretty huge story event, because like that sets up everything that's going to happen post Midgar. And then ultimately, he has the showdown with Sephiroth and kills him in the end. So he's a pretty big deal. Is he fun? I think so. I mean, his like, I think he has the highest average stat total of all the characters, so he's a really good team member. Because of the materia system, there's like a lot of customization for every character. So other than stats, the only thing that makes him kind of like more unique are the limit breaks. And I think his limit breaks are some of the coolest looking ones and pretty effective too. Like Omni Slash is one of the most powerful ones. It looks freaking awesome. Meteor Rain is super tight. I like how he just like swings his sword and then like meteors fly out of his forearms. That's super cool. So yeah, he's pretty cool. Now, as far as where he goes, This is kind of I think I'm gonna put him here. I think that he is great, but I do think that maybe he's a little overhyped. He's still a great character, maybe a little overhyped. I don't know. I almost feel like, based upon everything I said, am I like not doing my? Am I not being true to myself if I don't put him higher? I think he's better than Bards as far as a character goes. Um, I'm gonna put him here for now, and then I might change my mind later. Okay. Now I didn't. I actually wrote a whole thing for Ramza from FF Tactics. Ramza isn't here, but I still want to talk about him anyway. So I'm gonna do that. So FF Tactics is one of my favorite games of the whole like series. If this was a question of which game has the best story, like Tactics would pretty much be like pretty top. Um, but we're talking about Ramza now. I think Ramza is maybe a little underrated, but not by much, to be honest. He starts out as kind of a naive nobleborn with like these lofty ideas of chivalry that basically get crushed by the cold realities of a world in which you know um, power and money are more important than morality, which sound familiar maybe. But generally, he's like a courageous dude, and he's like just or whatever. This doesn't mean like he does grow as a character. Like he once he realizes how like crappy the nobility are, he definitely changes and just seeks to like he gives up his position of rank and tries to just be like a mercenary, just doing like just to stay out of things. But he's eventually drawn back into the conflict largely by um, events that are happening because of Delita, who's his best friend as a kid. And this is important because his best friend Delita is like was a commoner whose sister was killed by the nobility, and so he's got quite the grudge against the nobility. And so there's kind of a weird dynamic because like Delita is trying to destroy the nobility, and Ramza is trying to stay out of it. But anyway, Ramza he doesn't really like change that much, to be honest. His character is pretty simple, but that's kind of by design because of his impact on the story, which is not that much. The whole point of Final Fantasy Tactics is that Ramza is like this dude who's just trying to do good things, like on a small scale, and gets forgotten by history, even though he's like a really good person. Whereas his friend Delita is the one who's really pulling the strings and changing the course of history. But in order to do it, he's like murdering people and starting wars and um, basically becoming the nobility in order to try to destroy the nobility. So he gets remembered by history as like this great king, whereas Ramza is forgotten, despite all of the good things he tried to do. And despite the fact that he kind of did save the world, whereas Delita didn't really just sought to gain power for himself. So it makes sense that he's a simple character, but it does mean that he doesn't really impact the story as much. Now, is Ramza fun? Well, sort of. He doesn't have any special classes, which is kind of in line with his character being one who doesn't really seek glory. But his stats are crazy. He is broken. He is the most busted character in the game. And yeah, I know. Oh, Orlando is a beast. Orlando poops himself in the presence of Black Mage Ramza with arithmetic and ninja speed stat growths. It's crazy. He lays waste to everything before him like he's, some kind of Old Testament deity. He's super strong, but he's not really unique enough to be like particularly fun to play as. Okay, but so if I were to rank him, he would be does what it says on the tin. If I had his picture here, he would go middle rank. Does what it says on the tin. Now we get to Squall. Now we get to Squall. Final Fantasy VIII, everybody. So I'm gonna try to be objective, but I think this character sucks. And I'll explain why. So, fundamentally speaking, Squall is an asshole. Like to the core, kind of, right? He's rude to everyone around him. He like looks down on all of his peers. He's like the quintessential edge lord. And I know that the reason why he is this way is because of like childhood trauma, right? He's an orphan, he's an orphan. He only had his sister. His sister gets taken from him, and so he pushes people away to protect his own feelings from being hurt if they abandon him. And I have to say, boo hoo. Maybe not quite that callously, but this does set the stage for some pretty major character development. So, Squall, does he have character development? Yes, he does. He has a lot of character development. He goes from being this jerk to being a leader who's like reserved but kind of nice. But my problem with his character development is that it sucks. And here's why I think it sucks. So for like the first half of this entire game, he is such a jerk to everyone. Like like he is constantly emotionally abusing everyone around him. Like Quistis comes up to him and is like, "Hey, I lost my job because due to poor performance." And Squall is like, "Piss off, monkey on the caw, right? Who cares? I don't. Go talk to a wall." Super, super mean, like to Quistis, even though she's like in a really tough spot. He's mean to Zell all the time. He's mean to Renoa. He's mean to everyone. He's just like mean. But here's the thing: no one like his friends just continue to be his friends. Like they continue to like him, even though there's like no reason for them to. There's no reason for them to like this dude and to like continue working with him. I know they're kind of forced to work with him because they're like a cadet and stuff like this, but like he uh like but you don't have to be friends with the people you work with. But they've like constantly got his back and they're always like looking out for him and stuff. And then he just like spits in their face and is like, "Yeah, whatever, hair flip," you know? Like it's so or like, "Oh, shake my head." Oh, he just rubs his head. I remember doing this gesture a lot. Je n'ai pas dû manger ce peloton, right? So it's crazy to me that he's like so mean to everyone. Eventually he changes because people continue to be nice to him. But it just feels so like ridiculous to me that the characters do that. The characters continue to like him. The worst is his love interest Renoa. Like he offers her nothing but vitriol and condescension, and she's just like, "Oh my god, you're so hot and broody, dance with me." And like I felt no chemistry between them throughout the entire game. To be honest, I felt like nothing. I feel like disc 1 and 2 Squall would make like an incredibly abusive partner. One of the worst examples of this and examples of Renoa is Zell messes up, I think, or some other party members mess up, and Squall like starts digging into them, right? And then Renoa calls him out on it. Renoa's like, "Hey, you're being a jerk." And then Squall has one of his convenient fainting episodes. And then when he wakes up, Renoa apologizes to him. Like, Renoa apologizes to Squall for calling him out for being mean. And I don't recall him saying he's sorry or anything like that. He just continues on being a jerk. And that's it. But like, I was like, "Really, girl? You're going to apologize to him? You're going to apologize to him for that? Are you kidding me? That's crazy. That's crazy to me." Like, he's he's a terrible individual. And then like the whole point is that we are supposed to like that we're supposed to appreciate this character's development just because we pity him, right? We pity him because he's an orphan, and so he's had a rough childhood, and so we're supposed to accept him and his change, even though I don't feel like he's earned it, just because we pity him. But here's the thing: most of this entire main cast are also orphans. Like this whole game is filled with orphans, and the majority of them have their problems, but they're generally nice people, and they're generally good and friendly, and working through it. But not this dude, not him, not him. And yet he's the guy that we're supposed to pity enough to just accept when he changes. And so I don't like it. I don't feel like it's earned. I feel like a better way of his development happening is that he actually suffers consequences for being rude to people and being mean, which he never really does. He never really faces consequences. His friends are always by his side. They're always there. Renoa, she's there. They're always there, even though he treats them like trash. And and I feel like it'd be better if like maybe they abandon him, and then he has to actually learn something and learn why it's important and why he actually did value those relationships and how he ruined it. That for me, that would have put this character from like garbage trash character, which is where I'm putting him, to like here, this tier. Great sex, but someone farts in the middle and it's a bit distracting. That's the other thing about Squall. I know I put him in garbage trash tier, but he does have cool moments. Like, I think one of the coolest moments in any Final Fantasy is honestly the opening sequence to Final Fantasy VIII with like the choir that sets in, and you got Squall and Cipher, whatever, fighting each other, and fireballs, and that's all cool. And then another really cool moment is in that parade where like the guys are doing the Thriller dance, and then Squall hops in the car and drives off. Like that scene's super cool too. So there's like a lot of cool moments he does. I just like can't stand his arc. It just ugh. It's just so disappointing to me. So disappointing to me. Is he important to the story? Yeah, he's important to the story. Not maybe not as important as like Laguna or Adia or Sid or Renoa, but he's pretty impactful. Is he fun to play as a character? Well, here's the thing. He's kind of crippled in his funness because of FF Final Fantasy VIII's mechanic. Means because of the Guardian Force system, they're the only thing that makes any character unique are their limit breaks. Other than that, they're all exactly the same, pretty much. Um, so his limit breaks are cool, I must admit, and timing the gunshots to get criticals hits is pretty fun too. But in general, like there's not enough to make him unique enough to be fun or set him apart from everyone else. So he's garbage trash character. And that's what I think about that. Someone's got to keep Titus company, I guess. Oh, well, just you wait, Thrashy. I know you know where this is going. I know you already know my thoughts on Titus, but we'll get there when we get there. So, Final Fantasy IX, Zidane. Zidane. Zidane is sick. This character is awesome. He is like one of the very few characters on this list who is like upbeat and positive. He's just like feeling good about life and like happy and optimistic. And that's a nice change from, the previous three entries that are all kind of moody and broody and, you know? But he's just like cool. He's like witty, he's heroic, he's kind, he's got charisma. You just like to hang out with this dude, or maybe even be this dude, wear his skin or something, put on his tail. He's just cool. So he doesn't really have a lot of faults, to be honest, which he makes him in danger of like being labeled as a boring character. However, I think that his personal trials within the story make up for that. Because here's the thing, not every character needs development in order to be interesting, or not development during the storyline to be interesting. For example, you got characters like Shadow from FF6 and Auron from FF10 that are both great characters with relatively little development. But they're interesting because a lot of their character development happened like before the game. And so they're like onions, right? You unfold the layers as you play the game and you learn more about them and realize that they're more complex than you thought. So that's one way to do character development to make a character very interesting. But some don't even need any character development at all, and Zidane is in that category. So Cloud's development is he has to go through trials to accept who he really is. But Zidane's trial is holding on to himself despite the like storms of life, right? So when he finds out that he's basically a science experiment created to destroy life, his whole like perception of him just being a happy-go-lucky, friendly, hey, rock and rhythm guy is basically destroyed. And he's left into depression. He falls into a huge depression. He wants to abandon his friends because he feels like he's not worthy. But and it's a pretty low moment for him. However, his friends show him that he does have value because they've seen his value in the past. They know that he's good. They know that he's got all these great qualities because he's earned that. He's earned that position in their minds because he's proven it to them time and time again, unlike a certain other garbage, trash, card stealing character that we mentioned previously. Zidane actually earned it. Basically, this helps him rise out of his depression and find his self worth. And so this is a really good narrative plot point, even though he doesn't develop. Because for him, his trial is to hold on to his true self, not find it and accept it like Cloud, but basically not lose sight of who he really is in the first place. So that works really nicely for him. I do think it's done a bit rushed. It's kind of rushed, and then there's really only like one sequence where he's on his own, and then his friends just immediately come back to get him. I would have preferred it if maybe he's alone for longer, like a longer stretch of the game. You only have Zidane in your party that you have to navigate things, and things are really hard, right? Like you struggle a lot more because you don't have your party members with you, and then they come back, and then it's like all cool. It's a little rushed for my liking. Is he impactful to the narrative? Yeah, he like helps Garnet escape and stuff, but honestly, like Garland and Kuja are, and even Garnet to some degree, I think are way more impactful maybe. And the other thing too is that Zidane is almost always just in a reactionary position. Like Zidane doesn't do a lot of things, or like you as the player don't do a lot of things throughout the game that are proactive. You're mostly just responding to, oh crap, Kuja destroyed this village. Oh crap, Kuja destroyed this city. Oh crap, Kuja destroyed this or killed a bunch of rat people, you know? You're just very reactionary the whole time. Now, is he fun as a character to play as? Yeah, for sure. He looks kind of wonky a little bit with his weird cuffs that are not attached to anything. There's no sleeves for his cuffs. He just has cuffs. His speed stat's super good. He can do a lot of damage. His trance is pretty cool, but trance is kind of lame in general in FF9. So I'm gonna put him in this tier, ahead of Bart's. Pretty good, but not perfect, I would say. Okay, moving on to FF10. Here we go. All right, hot take coming through, baby. I think that Titus is one of the best Final Fantasy protagonists that Square has ever produced. I think he's a fantastic character. And I get it. I know why people don't like him. So I'm going to start off with addressing some counter arguments. Ah ha 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 ha! Yeah. Thrashy's like, case closed. I rest my case. Ah ha 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 ha. Close the book. So first, some counter arguments. The first counter argument is he's whiny. And my response to that is, so what? Being whiny doesn't make him a bad character. Maybe you don't like him, but it doesn't make him a bad character. I don't like Squall, not because he's a jerk, but because I think that his character development is unearned and cheap. But Titus doesn't fit into that. And I'm calling him Titus. I know it's supposed to be like Titus or whatever. I don't care. He's Titus. Um, but I can see why I don't like him. That doesn't necessarily make him a bad character. Also, he's labeled as a crybaby a lot, but honestly, he doesn't really cry that much. And when he does cry, they are in pretty understandable circumstances. For example, when he's a child and his father is verbally abusing him and berating him, he's crying, which, he's like 10 or 9 or 10. So that's, understandable. Or like when he later kills his own father at the end of the game and he cries. Another perfectly understandable time where you might cry after you've finally forgiven your dad only to have to kill him. Pretty good time, I would say. He also lost everyone he knew. Yeah, he loses everyone that he knows, right? And then we can think of times he doesn't cry in situations that are very cryable. For example, after he's sent to Spira, he's all alone, stranded, no food, no water, no shelter, out of the frying pan and into the freezer, right? Does he cry then? No. Y'all might cry then. I might cry then. Probably would. But he doesn't. And he's just been sent through a portal into another world where he has no friends, knows nobody, and has no food or water. That's a cry-worthy scenario, I would say. But Titus don't cry. Furthermore, he also, finding out that Yuna's gonna die, it's implied that he cries, but we never actually see him cry. We see him run up to Valefor and he's sad, but we don't actually see any tears. He's just so it's not confirmed. We can't assume that he was crying then. It's never confirmed. A lot of the other times that people are saying that he's crying, he is he denies that he's crying. He says, "No, I'm not." He refutes it. What is this argument? He totally cried. We cannot confirm. We cannot confirm that he cried. It is circumstantial evidence. If you cover a face, never happened. Never happened. We don't know that he cried. And even if he did cry, I would say that that's a justifiable cry-worthy situation. Even if I grant that he did cry, I would still put that in the cry-worthy category. If the tear doesn't slip, we must acquit. Exactly. Now look at this Chewbacca, right? So anyway, yeah. That's one of my arguments. First of all, this is a huge part of his character growth. The fact that he's whiny and a little self-absorbed is part of his story of, maturing essentially, right? Um, and also he is like self-absorbed, but he's never mean. He's never mean like someone else, right? He actively goes out of his way to help people that are in need, right? He joins the lowest ranked team in all of Spira to help them win the cup, right? Even though he's like a star player and could join any team he wants, he helps out Yuna when before he's met Yuna, right? Yuna is in the cloister of like the cloister of summons or trials or whatever. They're like, oh, the summoner might die when they're in there, and Titus is like, oh, we gotta go save her then. Like, we can't just let her die. And they're like, no, my tradition and religion and stuff. and Titus is like I care, and he just runs in to do it. Which we're supposed to agree with Titus, right? We're supposed to agree that like our morality should include the idea that a human life is more valuable than a religious belief. So I'm on board with Titus in his decision to do that. So he has moments where he's actively helping people out. He tries to cheer up, Yuna when she's sad and all that kind of stuff. So he shows us that he is whiny, but he's good natured. Also, one kind of cool thing is that he's like one of the only main characters that doesn't have any combat experience or any aspirations for combat experience. He's just a like an athlete, right? A high level athlete that's thrust into this scenario and has to navigate it. Okay, number 2. Yuna's the real main character. Let's address this. The answer is no. Just no. She's just not the main character in the first game. In 10.2, yeah, she's the main character, but not in the base one. For 2 reasons. One, we're clearly intended to see the world through Titus's eyes. We learn everything about Spira through his experience, and we're encouraged to judge things the way he does, just like I mentioned before. Also, the whole thing about Sin, the main, like one of the main antagonists, being actually his dad, is a pretty big point in that regard. But then also, like the reason why people think Yuna is the main character is because she's supposed to summon the final Aeon, right? She's supposed to go in and then give up her life to summon it, right? And sacrifice herself. But in the end, she doesn't, right? She doesn't because they look to find a different way of doing it. They look to not perpetuate the cycle of Sin dying and then being resurrected later just to come back and kill. So then you have to sacrifice another person so that he dies, but then he's just going to come back later. So they seek to break this cycle, but in doing so, Titus learns that he's going to die if they do that. He's the one who's going to have to give up his life and make that sacrifice, which at the beginning of the game, he wouldn't do. At the beginning of the game, he just would not do that. He would try to save himself. But after going on this journey with Yuna, he learns from kind of her example and learns that sacrificing yourself for the ultimate, for like the to save the world and save the people he loves is more important than having what he wants, I guess. And so he in the end makes the selfless sacrifice, not Yuna. Yuna doesn't do it. Titus does. Okay, another reason why he's got great character development is his resolving his issues with his dad. From like the first 5 minutes of the game, it's pretty clear that he's got major daddy issues because his dad was rather abusive to him. But as he journeys through Spira and goes to understand his dad a little more in depth, he realizes that his dad is complicated too and doesn't know how to be a good parent. And ultimately, he forgives his dad. He doesn't excuse what his dad did, but he forgives him. He still says at the end, "I hate you," but it's sort of a "I forgive you" kind of "I hate you," if that makes sense. And then, of course, he's forced to fight and kill his dad, but he does that to save his dad from himself because his dad doesn't want to be this killing monster that goes around destroying villages and stuff. So he does it to save his dad as much as to save everyone else. So it's a pretty impactful moment. And one of the moments that still gets me is at the very end when when Titus finally fades away and he like jumps off the ship and then he goes and he high fives Jecht. I thought that was that's a pretty powerful moment, I think. I think you can guess where he's going. Titus is he's going to the top of that list, baby. Now, is he fun? Titus is a super good party member. Like, eventually everyone can learn every skill because of the sphere grid system. But that's really only important if you're going to kill all the super bosses and stuff. But for the main stretch of the game, Titus is like super useful. because he has access to time magic like haste and slow, which are broken, not broken, but they're super important. He's got quick hit. He does good damage. He's fast. His limit breaks or his overdrives are good. Um, they're not as good as like Riku's or Waka's. Anyway, he's awesome, and that is my case for Titus. Waka was also the whiniest character in the game. Oh yeah, if we're talking about whiniest, worst characters, Waka, Waka. I mean, oh my goodness, he is just the most like I am blind to everything but my religion, and I'm a racist against Albed people, and I'm horrible. Like Waka is he is the worst. Okay, FF11 I'm not doing because it's an MMORPG. I've never played it, so yeah. All right, here we go. Final Fantasy 12. Now, everything we say about Waka, or not Waka, about Titus not being the main character. All right, I'll admit it. Titus is a better character than Waka. Yeah, Waka is the worst. Ultimately, though, Riku is like the best. Maybe not the best, but Riku is my favorite. But Titus is definitely not the worst in FF10. Not the worst. I did think for a second that this character actually was the MC. Technically, yes. But everything that we said about Titus not being the main character actually does apply to Vaughn. Vaughn is the real Titus stereotype. Because this guy doesn't do anything. He's like Final Fantasy 12 is like super Star Warsy, but the problem is that like they set up Vaughn to kind of be like the Luke Skywalker, right? He's the Luke Skywalker of this tale, but they gave all of the things that make Luke Skywalker special to other characters, right? Like Balthier and Bosch have like the whole family twists that happen when like their twin brother and like is a thing, and there's like his dad is like a scientist or whatever, that's evil, and there's all that, and then like Ash has like I'm royalty, I've got these powers type of thing, which is like the Force. So they basically stripped Vaughn of the two things that made Luke special, and so he basically ends up just being like just some weird friend that just sort of hangs around. He's just like there, like you're just like talking to someone, and then like this guy just comes along and is like, "Hi, hey, what's up? You want me to tell you about the efficacy of Sherman tanks in World War II or something?" He just kind of like appears. So he's like a nothing character essentially. um, Development, none that I can recall. He's just like a plucky main character who wants to be a sky pirate, and then at the end, he's a plucky main character who wants to be a sky pirate, or he is a sky pirate or something. Impact on the story, lol. Is he fun? No, not particularly. Here's why. I played the US version of this game, the North American one. And in that game, no character has any special traits. They are literally all carbon copies of each other and can be anything you want. And I hate that. I hate that so much because any kind of personality that the characters have is completely gone. It's too much customization in my opinion. Now I know that in the Zodiac Age, I think it's a bit different because I think they actually have different stat totals that encourage them to go into certain jobs, and you can customize it, but like you're kind of encouraged to go to certain routes, which I like better. But he is a plank of wood. He's less of a plank of wood than these guys, I guess, but yeah, he's a plank of wood. Okay, writing. Now, if you've been on my stream a bit, you know that I've never actually finished Final Fantasy 13, and I haven't played too much of it. So maybe I'll have to update this list event sometime in the future. And after everyone, maybe I'm gonna post this to YouTube later. So maybe a couple of random people will see that and tell me how wrong I am. And so maybe I can make another one after I've played Final Fantasy 13 if I ever do. She seems cool. She seems cool. She seems like a badass, that's for sure. I like how she looks. She looks cool. She seems like maybe she's a little too protective and judgmental from what I remember. But I don't really remember her character development or anything like that. So I'm just gonna put her here for now. The From what I remember playing, the battle system in 13 is pretty cool. Like you've got like the break gauge and it's like a real-time system that seemed like a pretty natural advancement of the old tried and true and beloved ATB system from Final Fantasy IV, which is super sick. And I think that she's like an offensive debuffing type role, but I think you can also make anyone everything, but she like or make everyone anything, but she kind of prefers those roles, I think. Oh, and I think she has like a unique summon. I think that all the characters have like unique summons, I think, and hers is like Odin or something like that. Lightning Me seeming like one of those inexplicably popular bitch characters. I don't know why anyone would like her more than Squall, to be honest, but there could be always be something I'm missing. Yeah, I honestly don't know enough. Like, I don't know enough to comment on her. I'm putting her in do what it says on the tin because that's sort of like I know she's not a plank of wood, for example. Like I know she's not a plank of wood, but I don't know what she is. Exactly. Maybe she would be garbage trash tier. Maybe she'd be the best. I don't know. So I'm just gonna play it safe and put her in the mid range for now. I watched a video on her like character development, but it's like there's so much crazy plot from FF13 that I was like out of context and I don't understand it because it's so convoluted I was like, okay, she like saves people's souls. She's like Jesus or something. I don't know. I don't know. FF14, basically see FF11. I've never played it. It's an MMORPG. I don't even know if there are main characters. So, yeah. Okay, now we come to our final character at long last. So, Noctis. Noctis Callum. Okay, Noctis is honestly a great character that was done a little dirty, I think. In a lot of ways, he's kind of like a more somber version of Titus. He's a bit immature, right? But rather than being like a goofball, like Titus is kind of like whiny, but he is funny. Like he has a lot of comic relief to him with the ah ha ha ha. I think it's funny, even though it's like kind of cringy. He also does the part where he like he's constantly complaining how he's hungry or he smells RN. Like he's pretty funny, I think. Noctis is not funny at all. He's pretty serious and reserved, but he is immature, and he kind of resents the fact that he's like a prince, and he has all these princely duties to attend to, but he sort of resents it, and he kind of resents his lot in life that he's kind of pigeonholed into doing all these things. He's also got a bit of a distant relationship with his father. It's not a bad relationship, but it's just distant. Like it's just distant, not necessarily abusive like Titus's is. So he acts rather selfishly at times. He also has a lot of bad things happen to him. Like his dad dies in the beginning of the game. His whole kingdom is overthrown by an enemy kingdom. So there's a lot of pressure for that. He eventually sees his love interest murdered in front of his eyes. He goes through some shit. He goes through some shit, I'll say. And to be honest, and kind of what I like about this is he doesn't handle it very well at all. He handles it in a way that's kind of understandable, but it's not good. He like lashes out at his friends, his team members. He's super mean to them. However, unlike Squall, this actually has pretty horrible consequences. Um, his actions towards his friends, they grow distant towards him. There's conflict and fighting. His friend, one of his friends, Gladio, I think, leaves him. As a result of his actions, Ignis is permanently maimed. So like there's horrible things that happen as a result of his selfishness, which this gives him an opportunity to grow in a very believable way, as opposed to this guy right there, in my estimation at least. Like he has an opportunity to see that he's wrong, and then he's kind of going on a little bit of he has a bit of a redemption arc. So this is a pretty good character growth. My problem with it though is that it's like super rushed. It basically happens in like a time skip where like he reunites with his friends to confront the final battle, and he's a totally changed man. He's even got a beard, you know, and he's ready to cast off his old ways and become an adult and do his duty. He makes amends with his friends, you know, he apologizes and all that, is eventually, you know, forgiven, also because of the time skip. You know, it's something like 10 years passes, so some old wounds have kind of healed a little bit, although I don't believe a certain character's vision comes back. And he's still permanently maimed, um, which is unfortunate. But yeah, the problem, and eventually he goes on to fight the main baddie, Arden, who is like a super good villain too. Arden is like a really great villain with tons of backstory and all that. And in the end, he kind of like Titus has to die in order to win and give up himself to save his kingdom. And that's always, you know, like good character moments, I guess, that's self-sacrificing and just the growth too, because Noctis at the beginning of the story again would not have chosen to do that. He would have ran from his, and he did run from his responsibilities to some degree, but the Noctis at the end of the game realizes how important it is and goes through with it. But yeah, it does. There's like a lot of build up to the time skip where all this development happens, but it just kind of snowballs from there, and so it could have been done better. Now, I know there's like a ton of DLC for this game, which I haven't played, so maybe it's done better in DLC. But you know that is a whole can of worms in itself. Paying like I think to play this game in its entirety means that it's like a game valued at like $120 or something like that, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. Damn you, Square, for doing that. But yeah. Is he important to the storyline? Yeah, definitely. Like, there's so much lore in this game, and a lot of the backstory is like huge and revolves around Arden and other characters and stuff. But it all eventually comes down to Noctis and versus Arden and that conflict, and he's the main focal point of the main narrative. So yeah. Now, is he fun? He's the only character you get to play as, really. So the question in the base game, at least, so the question of is he fun is really a question of whether or not Final Fantasy 15's gameplay as a whole is fun. And the answer is generally yes. Like, it feels good to move him around. The combat's fluid and fast and rather gratifying. I like the magic system. It's it's like you have to like mix magic potions and then use those, which I think is kind of cool. The parries are satisfying, and he looks cool in general. I mean, he's a cool looking character for sure. And honestly, I think Squall's a cool looking character too. I know I like talked a lot of shit, but I think Squall's a cool looking character. There's a lot I like about Squall aesthetically. I just feel like the I just feel like his development's so unearned that I just can't like him. But Noctis is aesthetically very cool. But the problem with Final Fantasy 15 is the combat does get stale and repetitive. At least I thought so. There just wasn't enough variety to keep me engaged. Also, most of the skills that you learn, if I recall correctly, they're like passive buffs to Noctis. So you basically just have like your main kit from the beginning, which means that like the system of progression isn't very rewarding, um, because you're just gaining passive buffs. You don't really feel like, oh, I got this new sick skill, you know, that I can bust out, or like some new technique that requires different inputs. There's nothing like that. So that's kind of meh. So I'm gonna put him here, maybe here. Okay, and that's my tiers. Let me see real quick if there's anything that I want to change. Um, I feel pretty good about this right here. I literally created this tier just for with Squall in mind. Now, I will say this though. I will give one caveat to this my squall thing that I should have mentioned before, but I'll mention it now. In general, I just didn't enjoy a lot of the game mechanics of Final Fantasy VIII, and so even though I have a lot of criticism of the story and a lot of the characters, it is very possible. I will admit that my opinions are colored or biased because I just wasn't enjoying the game that much because I didn't like a lot of the game systems and mechanics. So I will throw that out there. I will throw that out. I had a lot of problems with the game itself, so you know, there's that. Okay, I think that I don't want. The only thing I might change is Cloud. Kind of like he might be. He might be. There might be a fart in Cloud. There might be. But yeah, I'm curious to know if you would change anything about this. What would you guys change? You do this? Probably. I know some of you probably would. But yeah, let me know if you have any like major things that you would change. I'm curious to know what some of those might be.